This time my left hand is through, and I'm grabbing his calf. Okay? I'm doing that because ultimately, guys, my right hand has to come out to make this sort of a grip. It's sort of like backhand grip, so I can invert. I don't want to have a big gap where there's no grip and I go like this, and he pulls that leg out, and I lose everything. Yeah, no good. Instead, I hold my left hand here at his calf. If I can get even behind his knee, it would be even better. Now, when I let go of this, when he goes to pull this out, it's tough, and then I can go into my inversion. All right, now I want my foot over his hip as I invert. Okay, now I come here. The first thing we're gonna do is I come up. Now look how I have this scoop grip, okay? From here, it's gonna be very easy for me to gain an attack. What I'm gonna do is largely dependent upon if he sits back or if he comes forward. If he comes forward, what I do is I catch at his knee, I shoot my hips up, and we go into a double cross ashi, okay? So this time, just gonna go here. Okay, so this time, guys, I come up, I've got this scoop grip like so. He comes towards me, I grip at his knee, I'm gonna shoot this leg around, and I put his hips to the mat. All right, I'll hop a little bit this way. All right, guys, so from here, look at where his leg is. This is a really good situation to take this hand. I grip at his knee, I bring this over, and I gain an ankle lock, okay? From here, you've got a double cross ashi. This is a really strong controlling position to look for heel hooks on either the primary or the secondary legs, okay? I don't think this is the best position to gain heel exposure, okay? I think that there are better ones, but this is still a pretty good one, and it's an amazing controlling position, okay? Even if you don't get the heel hook from here, right? Let's say he hides the heel really well, hide the heel. Focus on this leg, yeah. It's very easy to just come up, and now we can score sweeps and stuff, all right? So, that's another good attack. We'll go here again. All right, so now this time, what should we do if the guy like really sits back on us? Because if he does, that last attack is not really going to be that effective. All right, so I'm here. So now I invert. No, sit down. No. So like this time he's kind of like bringing this hip low, like because what he's probably worried about is if he comes towards me, we go towards this and we entangle his leg the way we just did, right? So maybe the guy knows that you've got a good Kani Basami, and so he's sitting back. Guys, just go up. Okay? You've got a sweep, all right? So in that situation, you know, his options are either, like, he's either gonna fight the sweep, which is what he did in the first situation, which I think that's what better people are gonna do. And in that case, you can just, you know, he pushes, you pull, you go right into the Kani Basami, and from there you put his hips to the mat, and then you can just continue to come on top, right? You've restrained both of his legs. There's no reason that you can't come on top. He's not gonna be able to height because his legs are restrained. Alternatively, if he's just like giving up on stopping the sweep, if he's giving up on stopping the sweep, then just sweep him, you know? There's no way you can really force a Kani Basami in that situation. All right, guys, so now that we've looked at some demonstrations of techniques we can perform from a reverse de la Riva against a kneeling opponent, let's look at examples of this in like actual competition. All right, so this first one is going to be Junio Casio versus John Calasine at Kasai. A common theme we're going to see with entries into the reverse de la Riva from an open guard situation is this double grip here. There's a lot of different ways you can grab the hands, but what we're oftentimes going to see is that the offensive man is going to make a grip on the defensive man's hands. He's going to use that to pull himself into the reverse de la Riva. Okay, obviously this is not the only one, but it's pretty common. All right, so Juni pulls in, and then now John goes down to his knee. All right, we're going to see is Juni makes this grip configuration, which enables his inversion. As he does this, John crouches. Okay, what Juni would like to do is take this leg and thread it over the top of John's hip right here, but he's blocking that John is blocking it by posturing very, very low. Okay, we can still make the inversion when such things happen. It's going to be a little bit more difficult, but it's definitely still possible. As you will see right here, he's able to invert all the way through. And then Juni makes a scoop grip, comes up, and ultimately he's able to complete the sweep. Okay, he gets a nice trip there. Let's look at it again. So really, what's very key here is the placement of Juni's, what is that, his right arm. Okay, so right now it's over the top of the ankle. We're going to see in a second why that's not good for us. Okay, we want it underneath in a scoop grip, which is what Juni switches to. See how Juni takes his left hand, he grabs the ankle there. Here he's feeling out a cross-ashi entry, but it's not there. If we watch, take a look at what John does with his hand. See how John grabs here, right? He's going to strip it off, and as soon as Juni feels that, he bails on the entry attempt into the cross-ashi. I think wisely so. And he comes up, and see how now his right arm is underneath. So he's able to put John's ankle on top of his shoulder. All right, that means now it's going to be way harder for John to put weight on that foot. Okay, and that's going to enable Juni to come up into the sweep with a lot of effectiveness. Okay, and he gets a trip and he gets a sweep and he scores. Okay, now let's look at a second time. This happened first. I'm pretty sure Juni made adjustments based on this match. Now we're going to look at Juni attempt the same sweep, but it goes wrong for him, largely because of the grip he uses. All right, so now he's going against Ethan Krellinson. He's going to invert. Okay, same thing. You see how Ethan is posturing quite low here, and he's going to put his leg. Juni puts his leg in front of the shoulder, just as he did against John. Pretty much the same thing. Now here, okay, what's going to change is this grip. Ethan is sitting back, so that is going to open him up for the sweep. But because Juni has this grip, look what happens. When Juni comes up for the sweep, Ethan is able to expose his back. And Ethan ultimately is able to take the back, and he gets the finish later in the match. All right. Why is that the case? Why does keeping your arm there expose you to this counter? Well, what happens is, take a look at Juni's right elbow. When you come up, your elbow passes the center line of the defensive man, who shifts into being the offensive man, right? So the elbow is past Ethan's center line. So if you imagine a line going right through Ethan's center, Juni's arm is to the outside of that. Okay, if Juni had a scoop grip, that wouldn't be the case, right? So if we look at right here, when he comes up, see how his elbow, it's not past the center line, right? If Juni's elbow was, let's say, like over here, and it was past the center line, then his back would potentially be exposed. But the scoop grip allows him to keep the elbow over here, which means right now Juni's chest is facing John. Okay, which means his back is not exposed. And that really the key part of that is going to be the elbow and the defensive man's center line. Okay, the relationship between those two. Because here, it's an over grip rather than a scoop grip. Okay, the elbow, man, it's very easy for the defensive man to take his center line past the elbow to the outside and expose your back. Okay, so chronologically, this match happened first, and I would be shocked if this wasn't a factor of what made Juni make those adjustments for the Calisine match, right? Like, you know, he realized probably that having the overgrip exposed him to this counter and made the necessary adjustments. All right, so if you're going to make use of this sweep, okay, make sure you do it with a scoop grip. That's not, you can't do it with an overgrip. If the guy isn't savvy to this counter, right? You see Ethan here is basically setting it up, this grip here. Ethan's got his own scoop grip here. And as soon as Juni comes up, take a look at Ethan's left arm, it grabs the hip. So Ethan was setting it up. So he's very, very good at this. So it's possible you could still complete this sweep if the guy's not savvy to this counter, but that's not a good way of operating. We don't want to assume somebody doesn't know a good counter, all right? You want to proactively, preemptively prevent it by not giving them the opportunity to go for it. All right, so now that was the sweep option. Okay, now we're going to look at Paulo Miyao look to do a similar reverse de la Riva inversion against a kneeling opponent and entangle Kobrina's legs. All right, so it's as you'll notice, it's the same basic entry where he grips the hands and then he pulls and throws his legs in. Okay. Now here, what Paulo is going to do is he's going to invert. first is working off balance, and he inverts. Here, Kobrina does a good job of grabbing Paulo's legs to prevent Paulo from entangling Kobrina. There's a variety of ways Paulo could entangle him at this point. Kobrina is preventing that with the grips, and now it's a fight where Paulo is trying to free his legs and fully entangle Kobrina, and Kobrina is trying to get out of this dicey situation and prevent the entanglements with the grips on the legs. All right? As we're going to see, what happens here is Paulo ultimately is able to fully invert and come into a 50-50. Sometimes when we go for that inversion to the reverse X into the cross ashi, what's going to happen is the guy backsteps. So right here, Paulo would like to have that reverse X on Kobrina's, his right leg. Okay. Kobrina is bringing his hip low and he's backstepping, making it hard for Paulo to get that reverse X. Instead, what he does is he can't get the reverse X. He's going to fully invert all the way through into a 50-50. Okay, this is another option we can go for when that initial attack fails. Okay, now what we're going to see from here is now you can thread back into the reverse X and go into basically the same entry into the cross hashi that you would have done initially. Okay, so actually let's just watch it once and then we'll break it down. So Paulo pummels one leg. Now he's going to pummel the second leg. Yep, just like that. Very nice. He gets to a reverse X and he shoots through to a cross hashi. Okay, see how he's got the cross hashi and he's got control of both legs. Now let's take a look at how he did that from a 50-50. Okay, that was his initial goal. He wanted to get to, his goal was to get here into a reverse X, but what was happening was Kobrina was sitting his weight back and looking at backstep right here. Okay, it's hard to get that reverse X because of the location of Kobrina's hips. All right, so what he does is instead he rolls all the way through to a 50-50. It's another good option. And then from there, he relaunches his attack. All right, so from here, the first thing he's going to do is he's going to extend his right leg. So take a look. He's going to extend that right leg and pummel his left leg to the front of the far hip. Okay? He extends this here because there is a heel hook thread. I've talked about this on other videos, so I won't go over it at length. But if you don't hide this heel while you're opening your legs, there is a heel hook thread there. Go check my video where I break down Cyborg, Abreu, and Kanan Duarte's match where Cyborg hit Kanan with that counter, all right, for a more detailed breakdown of that. Anyway, and he's also grasping this secondary leg, so Kobrina can't just pull the secondary leg away, right? What Kobrina could do here, potentially, is backstep his left leg and look for a pass or even his own cross-ashi entry on this leg, all right? So he holds that leg to make that sort of a thing difficult. Okay, now what Paulo is going to do is he's going to take his right leg. He's going to pummel that inside. Here he's got a regular X guard, an Ushiro X guard. Right, his legs are in an X guard configuration, and he's got his Kobrina's leg on this side. Right, that makes it an Ushiro X guard. He's going to switch, so now he has an Ushiro reverse X guard. This is where we were trying to get to from that reverse De La Riva inversion. All right, now here, with the overgrip, I showed it from a scoop grip, but this attack can be done from a scoop grip or an overgrip. It's not that same risk of having your back taken is not there because you're not coming up in the same way as the Junior Ocasio Ethan Krellinson match. So this one's okay. You can do either one. The advantage of the overgrip is that it's a stickier grip than the scoop grip. Okay. The disadvantage is that you can't create that same weightless effect with the foot. All right. So there's advantages and disadvantages. But anyway, so what we're going to see is now Paulo shoots this leg pass and he gets the reverse X. I think the mistake Paulo makes here is he has really good control of both legs. I would have put Kobrina's hips down to the mat. But instead, he lets go of this leg and he goes for the heel hook. He's able to expose the heel, but it's not enough to get the finish. And they go back to a 50-50. Let's look a little bit at the attempted break and why it may have gone wrong. I'm going to do a much lengthier video in the future on inside heel hook breaking mechanics and the various ways they can be fucked up, basically, the ways the defensive man can fuck up your breaking mechanics. This is let's just look a little bit at this one here. All right, so Paulo exposes the heel, and he's able to expose the heel because Kobrina has his heel off the mat. In this situation, in any situation where someone is standing and there's a lot of space behind the back of their knee, if you can put pressure to the back of their knee, you can bring their heel off the mat and you can expose their heel. The closer you can get their knee to the floor, the more this is going to be the case. Okay, it's basically impossible for his knee to be on the floor and his heel to also be on the floor. I mean, I don't even see how that could be done. Okay, so here in this cross ashi, most of the time you're not really able to put enough pressure to the back of the knee to create this sort of effect. Normally you need like a backside 50-50 or a far hip ashi. Okay, but Kobrina is not really diligent about the placement of his heel here, to be perfectly honest. Okay, so Paulo is able to expose it. Now when they're here, Kobrina's knee is pretty close to Paulo's knee line. Okay, and as you see what Paulo's leg is doing, there's not a ton of pressure to the top of Kobrina's thigh, okay, because his knee is basically almost out of the knee line, all right? He's pushing here with his hand. So when Paulo goes for the actual break, what Kobrina is able to do is he's able to turn his knee to face the front of his knee to face into Paulo's hips. We're going to see it in a second. See how he turns right here? And that completely interrupts the breaking mechanics. All right. Now, if you can turn your hips to face the front of your opponent's knee in a double seated situation, you are very well equipped to expose their heel. But when you actually want to break somebody, that's pretty bad, because when you want to break somebody with an inside heel hook, what you want is pressure to the top of their thigh. Here, Paulo's not really able to get any pressure to the top of the thigh. And ultimately, Kobrina is able to completely eliminate any pressure to the top of his thigh with by changing the direction of his knee in relation to Paulo's hips. Here, Paulo still has heel exposure, but there's no heel hook break because Kobrina's knee is facing into Paulo's hips, and there's absolutely no pressure to the top of his thigh anymore. And Paulo, intelligently recognizes this, says fuck it, and switches once again to a bottom 50-50, okay, which is, I think, a good move at that point, okay? Now, what Paulo could have done was, if he wanted to get the finish, I would have recommended from here, he open up, put this foot, or at least, I mean, it's not to say this is easy, because you're going against Kobrina, who's very knowledgeable defensively when it comes to leg locks. He's one of the greatest of all time, period. What Paulo could have attempted to have done was he could have taken this leg and tried to thread it through to the front of that far hip to lock pressure to the back of this knee, and held on, and he could have gained outside positioning, which would have enabled him hypothetically to hold on to Kobrina as Kobrina moved around, right? So right now, Paulo has inside positioning with his feet, which is good defensively, but it's not super well equipped to hold on to the guy when he makes this shift. Okay, where here, the direction of Kobrina's knee completely destroys any viable heel hook breaking mechanics. Okay, now if your legs are on the outside, you can hold on to the guy, okay, and you can shift back into a situation where you can put pressure to the top of the thigh and get a viable break. But if your legs are inside and this sort of thing happens, there's a back take here, right? If Kobrina is able to take this shin and bring it underneath Paulo's shin, or if he's able to back step over his lower back. Check out my video where I talk about that. I break down Craig Jones' use of the back take where he steps over John Blank's lower back to expose his back in this sort of a situation, because Paulo basically is in a turtle right here. This is a turtle position. All Kobrina has to do is adjust the configuration of his body to Paulo's, and he'll be able to capitalize upon this turtle configuration of Paulo's body. Paulo intelligently recognizes this and bails because he knows, okay, there's a threat of a back take there. Okay, so anyway, I'm going to talk about this more in the future, inside heel hook breaking mechanics, because they're I think very, very important to understand if you're going to be a leg locker. So anyway, hope you guys found this useful, and comment down below what sort of content you guys would like to see me produce in the future.